Hackers are using AI agents at light speed. If you're waiting for a human to click that approve button, you've already lost the company.
Yeah, but speed is irrelevant, Damian, especially if it's the middle of quarterly earnings and the AI SOC quarantines a CFO's email, as an example. I don't think I'm ready to turn over my entire SOC to an AI black box that I have no control over.
Yeah, because what happens if you replace the whole SOC with HAL 9000s? That doesn't end very well for the people.
That's right. This is the Agentic SOC, machine speed versus human liability on the DTF Cyber Podcast. I'm Damian.
This is Troy.
And it's your boy, Fern. Let's go. So both of you guys know, I got a pretty old school Tesla. When I say old school, I mean first generation. It has a backup camera, but it can't drive itself. So whenever someone sees my car, they're like, oh, this thing looks nice. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't drive itself. And they're like, what do you mean it's a Tesla? I'm like, yeah, it's that old, right? So there was one point where I had to take it in for service work. They gave me a new Tesla. So I go on the highway and I'm cruising. And this car has full self-driving. Pretty awesome, right? Never had that in my life before. Never seen it. I forget how you do it, but you tap the button twice or something and it goes doo-doo, and it starts going, right? And it's going. And it's going. And I'm sitting there thinking this is nice. And then out of the middle of nowhere, it starts beeping at me. Right. And then I wake up. Just kidding. But what it did is it started beeping and told me that I needed to take over. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? What's the point of this self-driving? That's what I think about when I think about this topic is it's all fun and games until someone gets in a wreck, someone gets in a crash. Granted, it doesn't happen very often, but it can happen.
I know, but FSD, their studies shows that it's safer than human drivers. And even that loaner you had probably had older FSD, because my newer Tesla has FSD. I don't even put my hands on the wheel.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Oh, I've never seen that before. The one where I had you had to put your hand on it had to feel your hand. So you're saying that now the Teslas don't need to do that at all?
No. You want to go for a ride? Cars are outside.
After this, let's go. Take me to McDonald's. Give me a double cheeseburger.
But what were you saying? You don't trust it?
No, I think what it is less about trust. It's more about what happens if, right? Because when it started beeping at me, it kind of, what's going on? Frankly, I wasn't really paying attention because it was it's an autopilot essentially. It's doing what I'm.
Well, isn't that what it's supposed to do? Make sure you're paying attention because it's not supposed to be left unattended yet.
No, but maybe that's what I expected, right? And I think maybe that's the issue that some people are running into now is when they're looking at agents in their SOC, they're thinking their work's cut out for them before. Now a machine can take it over, or an agent can take it over. But when you stop caring or stop putting eyes on certain things, bad things can happen. I didn't get in a crash, luckily. I think it was more or less the construction, I think is what it was, if I remember correctly. The divider was coming over and it was making it to where it didn't know what to do, right? And when it didn't know what to do, I was like, hey, what am I supposed to do, right? So that's kind of what I remember with it, but makes me think about the same situation here is if you start deploying these agents in the SOC and they do what they're supposed to do, people start losing visibility. And if they lose visibility and they're not keeping eyes on things and they just expect that the agents do it all 100% of the time, which may or may not be true, do you open yourself up for opportunity of a threat actor? Maybe I'm looking at it the wrong way.
But Fern, I think if you think about your situation, you would be what we call human in the loop. So the autonomous system said, hey, I don't know what to do here. So I need the human to push a button, or in this case, put your hands back on the wheel and take over. But
you don't always.
I think this is...
So you don't always have to have the human in the loop. What about a Waymo? Have you not been in a Waymo? Or a Zoox?
Yeah, but have you seen Vegas? A Waymo in the middle of when there's a cop in the intersection directing traffic? Have you seen those videos? It's the cop is waving the car and the car's just and it's just stuck and no one's doing anything because it doesn't know what to do. Breaks down. Very specific situation.
I don't know. I think...
and I was talking about his specific situation, human in the loop. But yeah, obviously there's fully autonomous cars. And, to correlate this back to security, I think this is one of the opportunity spaces for us, right? This is where we're going to find a lot of efficiencies. We can deep dive into the different parts of Security Operations Center, but I do think automation there is, the future. Are we there now is the question.
Well, let me ask you that as a CISO
Mhm.
for, Fortune 500, are you ready to take on agentic AI in your SOC?
Mhm. We've seen this evolution of SOAR products and SIM for years, and our incident response playbooks. I think we've seen automation to some extent there, but we have not seen fully autonomous decision making in an AI agent before. So I am not ready to turn over the keys to the kingdom to an AI agent that could potentially impact production. I do think it's absolutely brilliant to use that to get all the information for a human to actually make the decision and push the button. In other words, take all the telemetry and give the investigative timeline and say, here's what the agent thinks should happen. And then when the human agrees and pushes the button, the agent can automate the response. That's where we're at. So where I would be today.
So
I don't think I'm ready for that to be fully autonomous.
So still have a human push the button is what you're saying for now.
Yes.
Until
but
you
then
feel comfortable.
The response is all automated.
Yeah. I think that's an evolution of comfort. Because at some point you're going to have the self-driving car where you don't even pay attention anymore. I mean, Fern was ready to trust that car even though it wasn't ready to trust him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when was it? Like 2 years ago, where Tesla said they were coming out with like these robo taxis, no steering wheels, right? So what happens then? Like, you just
you go into a Waymo. There's no drivers today.
Well, no, but there's like
even the Zooks. Have you been in a Zooks car in Vegas? There is no driver. It's essentially just a cabin.
Is there a steering wheel?
No,
there's not.
Yeah, but to that extent, Damian, I think I would be comfortable at some point once I see the efficacy of the AI agents to say, okay, now you can fully automate this chain. But the first time it takes down production or your website goes down, you're losing millions per minute, or your CFO's emails get quarantined that he was waiting on for something important, I think you'll quickly realize that the business, still has to have some kind of decision tree. So you may fully automate the lower impact items, but you still have to have some visibility into those larger things that could isolate a machine, stop important email, or impact any production system.
No, so here I would argue for the opposite, right? I think I agree there needs to be at least some oversight to begin with until you feel comfortable, but you can't stop innovation just because you're scared. That you just can't.
We're not stopping innovation here, but if you think about it, we are actually getting to resolution faster than we ever have before, but we still have guardrails in place so that we don't bring down the house with it.
Oh yeah, but what I'm saying is there's no difference between an AI agent versus an intern, because an intern could take down your company too.
Absolutely, and we have segmentation of rules and duties and things like that. So an intern shouldn't be able to take down production. If they do, they have way over provisioned access.
Let me get in the middle. Let me get in the middle for you guys real quick. Let me get in the middle. So we're just going to relate it back to cars because that's what I understand maybe a little bit better personally, right? So Damian's basically saying like, you want no steering wheel because innovation has to move at some rate. And Troy's saying like, yeah, that's all cool, but I still want to have some sort of like oversight, because what happens if is essentially like the question that Troy's asking is like, well, what happens if? And I think that's what everyone in security thinks is, if you look at things from the optics or a risk perspective, it's always, well, we know this over here, but the question everyone has to ask is like, well, what happens if, right?
I think there's always a what happens if. There's always going to be monitoring, whether it's an AI agent or an employee, or even a new system that you put in place, right? A new server, a new laptop, new software that you install on your endpoints. I think you're going to have to be able to monitor that anyways. So I'm not saying you're not going to have any oversight. You're not going to have any kind of guardrails. Like absolutely, you're going to have those, but you're going to have to start down this path of how do I get to SOC AI agents, and how much do I give them? Like, you're not going to have them drive by themselves, right? Until you feel comfortable.
Yeah. So let me ask you guys this, because this kind of reminds me of like the emergence of business resilience, right? So I think like what Troy's describing here is, well, what happens if something goes down and something breaks? So it's like, not to say if people aren't doing their job, but if someone had full visibility into your environment, they knew all the dependencies of their environment. They knew what worked and what didn't. If things broke, from a, we'll call it cyber resilience perspective, the situation of, well, what happens if kind of becomes like a moot point, because now you have a full understanding of your entire cloud environment. So if this breaks, or what happens if happens, you not that you have like a DR plan in that situation, but you have kind of like a path to remediation, because you understand the context fully from the business perspective versus, well, what happens if this breaks? Because like if you say what happens if this breaks, what that's really saying is like there's a situation out there that you may or may not have visibility into, right? So is SOAR more or less kind of like being replaced by or cyber resilience, because instead of the automation, the orchestration part of it and the remediation, that's kind of like the table stakes. And now understanding the business context from a resilience perspective is like SOAR is kind of like what pushes into that black box, and then out of that comes, well, we don't really matter. We don't care what happens in the box, because we know our way to navigate it post whatever situation. Like, am I making sense with that?
I think so. The way SOAR happens is really a way of thinking, if this, then that. And I think that methodology is dead. So does the terminology SOAR go away? Possibly.
Yeah.
Right? The way we think about SOAR triggering off of an alert in your SIM is probably not going to happen the same way. And so I don't know if that terminology sticks around. What happens to these SOAR companies? I have no idea. They need to evolve, right? So if they're still saying we're a SOAR company, they're probably going to have to evolve into more, agentic AI type of roles.
Yeah. But if they say they're a SOAR company today, they're more or less, not to simplify it or like take away the value of it, but they're more or less just playbooks and automation.
Yeah. Static.
Right? It's like, it is what it is. Here's the input, here's the output. It's not very dynamic. It doesn't take into context a lot of other things potentially.
Yeah. It's more like, if you see this, do that. Right. So you got to build these.
Like if you're hungry,
static.
Eat.
Yeah.
If your gas is low, fill it like your tank. If your battery's low, plug it in, right? But at a business level of, if this happens, then do that, right? So it's just a bunch of if-then statements.
Yeah, and if you don't tell it, you don't program it with enough information, it doesn't follow through. Like if it hits a spot where, I don't have an automation for that, it just stops.
Okay. Well, I noticed Troy got really quiet over there.
You guys are going through a couple of things. I wanted to come back to an example. Okay. I think that the correlation between cars and the SOC kind of goes away here. It's not really relevant when you get to full autonomy, that metaphor. But what I'm saying, what I think is that you're assuming, Damian, that you're working with perfect data. And unfortunately, what we find is in most Fortune 500s or even mid-sized companies is that the fundamentals like asset management and patching and other things, it's not perfect. And in fact, you're working with a highly complex world where, automation is great, but what happens when all the conditions that are supposed to be there aren't there, because you just can't do all that cyber hygiene at scale, or some companies haven't done it at scale correctly. And so I think that there's that. And then you're also dealing with real live threat actors. What if threat actors get access to that agent, or they hack the agent and take over that identity or that agentic capability? And now you've given the agents, full autonomy to go through in a touch environments like production.
Yeah, I don't think that's what we're saying. I don't think we're saying give them full, complete control and unlimited access. I don't think you can get there. All I'm saying is, if you have an AI agent, what's the difference between an AI agent and a human?
Exactly. And you mentioned interns earlier, so I wanted to go back to the stratification of tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. And so an intern would absolutely be in the tier 1, maybe below tier 1 space. They're the first level. They have certain privileges and entitlements that allow them to do certain things. An AI agent should mirror that. And then you have the tier 2, which is kind of a step up, more knowledge and skills. And the AI agents that are trained in that level can have those entitlements and privileges. And it should be able to do the same thing that a human should do in that same bucket. And then the tier 3, this is where your super smart humans come in and dissect and diagnose. And they can have an AI agent that assists them to gather data and to produce results. But I still don't think at a tier 3 level, you're ready to give an AI agent that kind of power, because now you're making them administrators of multiple systems. including production, and they could literally, just like we talked last week about immediately deleting the entire infrastructure, that could happen. Whether the AI agent did it maliciously through a threat actor or accidentally through its own mistake, I don't think we would ever want to have full autonomy on that tier 3 level.
Okay. What I'm hearing is you agree with me, but how we get there is a different story, right?
Yes.
So do we agree that we need to get to hopefully as much autonomy within a SOC as possible using AI?
100%. Yeah. And I think that's a feature I've talked many times about. This is where I'm the most hopeful for the impact of AI into cybersecurity and reducing risk, is right here where we're talking. So I'm not a naysayer here, but when it comes to the privileges, entitlements, and access we give to our AI agents, you have to be very careful.
Okay. So I think what we could cover and talk about in this, the rest of this really is how do we get there? Because the way you think about it, Troy, is going to be different than the way I think about it, right? I want to move as quickly as possible. I don't even like to worry about compliance and governance.
You don't even have a rear view mirror. You just go.
I know I have to do it, but I don't like to do it.
Okay. So,
and then I know, the one reason why I appreciate Troy on this show is because he's thinking about it more from a corporate level. In large company, we just can't do it. There's too much at risk.
Yeah, Troy kind of finds like the missing scale under the dragon's belly, right? It's like, well, hang on a second. What about this one situation, right? So what
about this, Fern? So we talked about a rear view mirror there with Damian and going fast. Do Waymos have rear views? And if they do, why?
They do. They even have steering wheels. But the answer, the question is why.
I think
that's a joke.
They have them there just in case, right? But okay, so this is something that I was thinking of when Troy was talking, and it is relating. A big part of security is understanding what you have, right? Your assets, right? I have, we'll say, observed conversations at work where, a CMDB comes up, and the reliance of people have reliance on that. But the reality is most of these conversations say that's probably the worst idea for your business, is that you rely on this CMDB as like a living, breathing asset, like inventory, right? Because it depends on how often you scan, and it's not like up to date. It's not current, right?
Well, I think that's with any, what Troy mentioned this earlier, right? It's like we never have enough asset inventory, whether it's hardware, software, identities. And so how do we get to making sure AI agents are operating at that level where they can make proper decisions?
Yeah.
They can't if they don't have the right information.
So, okay. So this is exactly where I was thinking in the context of like asset. If you have a CMDB that's outdated and you have something that does patching, right? The idea shouldn't be, do we do the patch? Is it patch needed? Did we send the patch, right? Was it delivered versus do we need it? Because you probably need it or you don't need it. But if you deliver it and you know that it was received and that it was done, the fact that you don't have record that it's been done or showing that it's been updated may not matter until the next scan, but you can prove that you've done what you needed to do, right? You've taken the action to kind of remediate the issue. So am I wrong in assuming that the SOC should operate in the same way? As like it needs to be able to take the action regardless of what it knows, because the action is the best course of action based on the situation. Whereas like if there's a patch that needs to be done, you don't have it. Hey, if I send out this missile to blow something up and fix it, or we'll send out the repair shop, right, do something to fix it, at least I know that it's been repaired, versus not having an accurate inventory and then relying and say, well, what do we do now, right? So it's kind of like take
one
the action.
Thing, Fern, I was going to say that the SOC doesn't normally push patches. That's an infrastructure component. But we have an old joke in cybersecurity, which is if you ask the CIO, the CTO, and the CISO how many assets do we have, you get 3 different answers because nobody has the source of truth. And so your CMDB should be your source of truth, and it should be constantly differentiating between all of the connected systems, from your EDR to your network scanners to your applications and your cloud and so on, so that you can continuously be identifying new items. And here's one of the key things that helps during your pen test season is you got to be able to see what's new on your network. So if somebody plugs in a device that shouldn't be there, you should be able to see that very quickly. So that's how up to date your asset inventory should be. And when you think about asset inventory, I talk to people and they're like, oh yeah, we know about all of our applications. That's not an asset inventory. Asset inventory is physical items, applications, identities, SaaS applications. There's so many things to an inventory, an asset inventory, and a CMDB that some people might be missing. So I think that's important. But the patching side of things, we like to leave to the infrastructure, and then we go back and scan and we report those vulnerabilities and the gaps. But Mythos has, thrown this big wrench in the works. We're going to be seeing a huge uptick in the number of 0 days or exploitables externally facing that have to be patched with urgency. So I'm just curious how people are going to handle that in the autonomous SOC, but also, respond to those incidents when bad things happen.
I don't think it's just Mythos. I think it's any AI. I know ChatGPT.
And I'm not even worried about Mythos, to be honest, because it's still behind closed doors and being neutered. But I'm worried about Chinese models that are advancing to the level of Mythos that are going to be used without guardrails by threat actors against us. Exactly. So Mythos isn't the problem here, folks. It's the other models like Mythos out in the world that we are going to be facing very, very quickly.
But this is where I have hope in terms of leveraging AI, because we all know, we just said we can't keep up to date with inventory. But what if you had a different agent monitoring every aspect of the business and then reporting into another AI agent that's collecting it all? And then that one would be able to say, I know where everything's at, and they could just tap the right sub agent to go grab it in real time, right? So you could have a CMDB that's a point in time, but what happens if that changes? So the AI needs to be able to say, okay, this is what I know from last week, but let me quickly check. And I think that can do it a lot quicker by tapping all these sub-agents and saying, hey, tell me what you got, and then consolidating it, updating that database in real time, and then providing the human with, or maybe another agent with real-time info.
That seems like a pretty good workaround.
So, I think the centralized database is probably where we need to reconsider the architecture, because having that, whether it's a CMDB with one static database or it's a SIM, one location with all your data. I don't know if that model works anymore.
I've seen that. We talked before we started recording here about certain companies in this space, and there's a certain company that has a set of agent identities that are doing that. Damian said the one's entire job is to go out and find things that we don't know about. And another one is to also check for sources of information that were supposed to be going into the SIM, or you think is going into the SIM, that you're not getting full telemetry from. So there's, we're seeing companies already adopting that kind of technology.
Yeah, I think it's, and the architecture, I think, is the right architecture. It's how you get there, right? You might have agents that are deployed to do specific things. Now, I questioned you on this before, and I question a lot of people. What's the value? Can you still go and want to buy these agents, or do you create them yourself because they're so easy to create?
I was going to ask you that same question because, I prefer to buy a product that I know is being updated and maintained by a company that I can hold accountable when things go wrong through an MSA. Or do you think your employees should be building all of these components? Not just these AI agents we're talking about here, but like other, related software and vibe coding type situations where you can either buy it or have your internal teams, vibe code it and then never maintain it.
I think a lot of businesses are going through that debate right now.
Debate, or is it the cost exercise? Because I saw something a few days ago where it talked about how much a developer costs per month and how much that same developer costs a business in terms of their tokens. Like, they're getting way more productivity from the people, but they're also spending, what's the measurement? A shit ton.
They spend the same amount in the tokens. Well, if you go and buy the agents, you have to look at the model. Are they using their own AI behind the scenes, or are they plugging into your LLM? In which case, you're probably costing yourselves more in tokens as well. So there's a lot to think about there as you get into the agent space. Do you build it yourself, or do you go and buy something? Troy likes to buy it potentially because there's better support, but I don't know if you necessarily get better support. It depends on who you're getting it from and what that support structure looks like, versus being able to control it yourself and know how it's configured or how it's started.
Certain things I like to buy, like this one specifically, I think is a segment I'd love to buy, a fully baked product that's been battle tested across huge enterprises.
I know, but
rather than
nothing.
just have my
What's
internal team
battle
train it.
tested today? I mean, that's difficult, right? I mean, maybe next year or in 2 years,
Mhm.
we'll have to revisit that.
But I think also like context matters for Troy too. Is like some of the places that he's been at have a lot of legal responsibility.
But a lot of times, this mandate's not even coming from the CISO or even from the CIO. This is coming from the top or the board,
Yep.
because I think what's happening is we have these news cycles of AI making us way more efficient, and so there has been a push to these technical teams to use more AI.
Yeah, just it's like use AI. I don't know how, but yes, just do it, right?
Yeah. Let me make sure I can say that in my earnings statement that we use AI.
I got to put more AIs. Like, I wonder now if you look at earning statements and you search AI like exclusively, how many hits you get in like someone's like SEC 10K filing. Like, I'm just
All of them.
but
Probably.
like every page there's some sort of
You don't mention AI, your stock price drops the next day.
Dead in the water.
So I mean, that's if I think about this architecturally, right? That the agents piece, I look at those as, if I were to have a human do it, what would I want them to do?
Yeah.
Now I just have more of them. I don't have to rely on one person. I could have different levels, like Troy said. It could have an intern level versus a full expert. I don't know where I'll be yet, right? Maybe multiple, but they're only as good as the data. And so do we leverage AI to then manage that data? And do we look at the architectural way of accessing that data, getting access to the data? And I think that's probably the foundation that a lot of people don't think about. Because if you only have one data lake where you think all your data is at, that's probably out of date today, like your CMDB or your SIM.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And I think, like you said, the architecture is changing. And we've kind of seen it in the SIM world where some of the newer players are saying it doesn't matter where your data is, just tell me where it's at and we'll figure it out from there, right? And that kind of like coincides with like the CMDB. Like you said, if you have agents that can go out and like tap different systems and say, hey, like what's the latest? Give me the latest, and do that, in a fraction of a second or however fast it can be. You don't necessarily need people in the loop there. You just how would I describe it is I think of it like maybe like cooking to me is a really good example. Is when it comes to cooking, like I want to be turning on the fire, putting the food in the pan and cooking it, make sure it's good, right? But if there was a way that I could just like snap my fingers and have all the ingredients pre-measured out on the countertop ready for me to go just to grab as I needed, that would probably reduce my cooking time in half. Because or shopping, right? That's shopping, driving to the store, getting all the stuff.
Well, that wouldn't be one person. That would be multiple people or multiple agents.
Yeah. So
you got the shopping agent, you got the inventory agent,
the measuring agent,
the measuring, the prep, and then
like let me cook. Like what Troy says, he wants to be in the middle doing that, right? But like the stuff that has like low risk, low impact, like why would you pay someone to do it if you don't have to? Right. And I think I understand the argument now in terms of cooking, right?
I think it's a good point, Fern. I think you're exactly right. Where we see the most opportunity is in those tasks that can be quickly automated, gathering intelligence, stitching together telemetry from all of our sources, really getting the kind of indicators that the SOC analyst tier 3 would need to make a decision, and I think that what you'll find over time is that we're going to become more and more trusting of those agents as they learn your environment and your data, because they're going to continually learn better ways of showing you what you're looking for. But in the end, they're going to know, with a better percentage of certainty what the accuracy of their information is as well.
And actually over time, you won't even have to cook it because there'll be another agent that will cook it.
Yeah.
And now you've taken all the fun out of Fern's job of cooking.
Yeah. A big part of not a time sink for me, but a time sink is cooking. Right? Because I do all the cooking in our house. So breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, whatever. I'm usually the one in front of the stove or going to the store, buying it. I tend to do all that. But like I would have so much more free time if I had someone that did that for me. So when this podcast blows up and we're taking over the world, I'm going to look into someone to hire to do all that stuff for me. Right? And then I can just cook. Right? But until then, we need you to subscribe and add a like.
Or you're going to have a humanoid that's going to cook for you. So you don't have to worry about like burning yourself. Oh, and everything's always cooked exactly.
Like the Jetsons. What was the robot's name in the Jetsons? The maid?
Rosie?
Okay. I knew Troy knew that. So Okay, so would you say that SOAR players are kind of in this quasi pre-extinction era, right?
Well, I think the term SOAR is dead.
Okay.
Okay. So these companies that were doing some of the orchestration and automation, they just have to step it up. I don't think the companies themselves are dead. It's evolve and adapt or go extinct.
Mhm.
And so if you're still doing basic automations, I think in the beginning, there's still going to be a need for that because you're going to have AI agents that are going to call the automations.
Mhm.
But over time, those agents can just go do it. You don't have to really have a static type of orchestration that's going to happen.
Yeah, one of the companies, I won't name names, their tagline is "SOAR is dead." So I think that they are quickly learning that AI.
Well,
is
we've
the
seen
future.
that, right? SOAR is dead. SIM is dead.
Everything's dead.
Yeah, I don't know what else is dead.
I don't know. Hopefully not me.
Somebody gonna say SOC is dead next. I don't know.
Probably. But so let me say this, and you guys can tell me if I'm right or wrong. Hopefully right. Is the whole reason people are making these statements is because of what I would say is the democratization of tools. We'll say the higher availability of these tools and resources that they didn't have previously. So if you were to think from the lens of if you needed a high-end developer for a year to build you an application because of the amount of work that it took because you didn't know how to code, you would have to pay for that, right? But now if you have access to a tool that's $20 a month that has the context of, proper coding, and you can get things done overnight with, a few thousand tokens or whatever it is, you kind of like compress the window of the development cycle, right? So the automation part, a lot of these things that are out there, the orchestration, the response, the playbooks, now there's easier accessibility to those tools that have the capability to take those actions than there ever was 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, when these sort of companies were out, no one else really had the ability to build it, right? Now they can. Doesn't mean they should, but they can. So there's like this perception of, well, we should just do this instead because it's cheaper, right? But the point that ties both things together is the availability of the tool, right?
Not just availability, the integration of tools.
Yeah.
And the
availability. So I'll give you an example here. So remember we were talking about OCSF in the past when I was talking about data lakes and the open cybersecurity schema framework to bring all of your cybersecurity data into one place, normalized so that you could search it. Agents are excellent at doing that for us now. So connect via API to all of your different tools and give the agents the ability to look at this data, normalize it across all of your sources so that an IP address is an IP address and a host name is a host name, and being able to really put together a story. Vendors have been notoriously resistant to making their output, their machine data, in a very common schema because that was proprietary to them. It made you locked into their technology, perhaps their SIM. And so we saw a big resistance from big tech in making their machine output normalized. Well, agents just took that and threw it out the window because they can look across an API and tell you that an IP address over there equals an I.P address over there.
The one challenge is that most organizations don't want to follow that standard OCSF, right? So now throwing agents at it, I think is probably a good idea. That the problem there is not every tool exposes enough information over the API. That's the one problem you have. So, and then the other question is how many tokens are you going to use to rescan all of it? So you have to have a good way to really index everything that you're seeing so that you don't have to go back and search for it again. You just have your indexes has to be solid.
Yeah, and I think there's agents that we're going to use to make our indexes more solid too. So I had a project a few years ago to tell how many sources we had going into our SIM, the amount of data that was coming in for each of them, what the percentage of what we wanted. Now agents can do that on the fly. It took me 6 months to a year to actually finish that project. And now we could probably do it in a day or a week with agents. So I'm really excited about that. And even the ones that don't expose enough data, you have the articulation that you can go back to that vendor and say, we need more data so we can put together this story. And I'm not really saying that we should be using agents to normalize the data. What I'm saying is that we have the convenience now of the fact that agents can look across all of your sources and decipher the story quickly without having to worry about translations and trans union of the data.
So I'm going to ask you, what happens if, right? Because what Troy's describing is there was a point in time, I forget how many years ago he said, but he was able to do a project in 6 months, and now I can do it overnight, right? So now you have an agent that's doing all this work. The one thing that agents are great at is doing the work. What they're really bad at is being interviewed. Like, how do you audit the trail of a ghost, in my mind? Because now there is this high availability of tools and agents that people can have, but there is this low, not context, but there's like very low availability of why and what, like who's regulating these agents, right? Or if you have to go back and say, hey, like, why did you press that button, right? Why did you do that? You can get an answer from a person, but like, how do you get that from an agent? That not to say that they're going rogue, because I not like scorched earth, but like, how do you regulate something that?
Have you ever tried to ask an actual person, why did you do something when they did something wrong?
If they're a kid, yeah. Because I have kids, yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing. They don't know. And a lot of times they'd be like, oh,
oops.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember. Or, sorry, this is what I thought I saw.
Mm-hmm.
Or they cover up their tracks. And we've seen this with AI covering up its tracks. The story where the AI went and deleted the production database and then lied about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that one. But I think it's easier, though, to get from logs what the agent is thinking, the AI agent is thinking at that time, and why that decision is made. I think, to me, that's easier to gather than to have to go and ask somebody what was going through your mind 6 months ago when you did this.
Yeah. And one thing you mentioned earlier, Damian, was tokens. And I want to just go back to that because I've seen a lot of innovation around the optimization of token usage. There's a lot of ways you can reduce the number of tokens these type of actions take, and then you can even bring the models in-house. So I envision a world where tokens are not part of the equation or the discussion. They are today because we're still new
I don't know if we'll get
AI.
there. I don't know. That's a dream. I think there's going to be, let's say, like utility monitoring, right? I mean, I know for a fact, Nevada and Arizona, we at least have different time of use costs on electricity. And you could schedule things like charging your electric car during the cheapest time. And so that kind of model where it comes down to what do I use, what's going to be the most efficient for me to use based off of these types of tasks becomes really, really important. Right? Do I use
and which model to use for that task?
Exactly.
You don't need to use the latest model for something that you could use, a previous model for and be a lot cheaper.
Yeah, like I didn't know this when I was working on my projects within Claude, and I'd started it with the latest and greatest Opus. You cannot switch that to a different model midstream.
Really?
Yeah. And so as I'm working away, and I'm like, oh, wait a sec, I need to dial it down a bit because I don't need high number of tokens to do the rest of this. You can't actually switch it. You have to start another project or task.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy. In OpenAI, I use ChatGPT a lot in Codex. It's instant. It basically determines based on what you ask it, which model is the most efficient to use. It actually says you can choose the model or you can choose instant so that as soon as you put the query in, it determines the best and most efficient model to use for that query.
Yeah. So if I'm doing something wrong in Claude, somebody let me know because I can't get it to switch in Claude, but I can do it in Gemini. I can choose the different models midstream.
That might be a feature, kind of like when iPhones only had one type of charging port. You had to go buy the special tool to only certain kinds of chargers because they didn't have USB-C on them. They had Lightning or whatever.
But I think that's where, that whole utility space of sending the command or the query through and picking the right model, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or Grok. I mean, they're all good at different things and they all, leapfrog each other. If you could just have one, and maybe this exists already where you could just have one, tell it what I want it to do, and it goes up, finds the right model, and the best model and the cheapest, most cost effective.
I know at least 3 startups working on that right now. So it's coming. And then there's also a company that I love that, can optimize your cloud. You use Microsoft, Google, and AWS, can tell you where the workload is the best suited for. That same company is also working on this functionality too. So a lot of good work around that. But I'm excited for getting to a world where we don't have to worry about tokens.
Yeah. I wonder if we're talking to the same company. I was talking to one earlier this week too. Something similar. So we should compare notes.
You guys got like secret conversations. I'm over here trying to figure out other things in my life. you guys are on the edge. Okay, so let me ask you this then. When it comes to a human in the loop, right? Troy would say you need that, right? Damian, you say maybe not, right? But I guess in that situation, if you have someone there, you kind of create this bottleneck, regardless of what role they play. Because if you just assume that, like, what is it? It's like an 80-to-1 ratio.
Agents to humans, yeah. And again, I agree with Damian 100% on the use of AI in the SOC to an extent. And I think my hesitation is around those agents that have access to, do real damage. We talked about last week, agents deleting entire production databases. That's what I mean. I don't want that. I don't want to give an agent that capability.
You just tell it. You're not allowed to delete anything.
Yeah.
You can isolate. This is what I would do, right? If I'm gonna have high fidelity and say, if I see something suspicious, I want you to isolate that machine. And if I end up isolating the CFO and the CEO, I'm willing to take that risk to save the entire company. That's okay.
Absolutely.
But I'm not going to, I would never give it the ability to go and isolate or wipe, like last week's episode, wipe 200,000 laptops in one go. I think something should automatically set off to say, okay, your limitation is, 5 laptops.
Yeah, it's kind of like with banking. Like when you want to send money, there's a limit to how much you can send, right? Depending on your account and what you have in there or who you're sending it to. Or if it's a new contact. Like if you add a new contact to your phone, at least for me, when you're trying to send money, it's like, it puts you through this prompt of like, how do you know this person? Is it a friend, family? Is it someone you met on social? Like it literally says this. Like I went through it yesterday. Is this someone that you met on social media?
You sent me money yesterday, I think. I don't even check.
I sent you that dough. And it was like, here's all these things, like essentially like social engineering scams. And then there was something else like, is this business related? Right? I was like, no, it's just a friend. Right? Click. Right? And then it went back and said, I'm going to send you the text or go over here to your token, your OTP authenticator app, grab the key, put it in here. So it made it difficult for me to send that money, right? But there were these, we'll call it guardrails in place to make sure I didn't get scammed.
Yeah, but there's different levels to that, right? Like you said, if you're trying to send $10, send it. But if you're trying to send 10 grand, oh yeah, make sure. Like I want you to make sure it's me.
Yeah.
And I'm sending it to the right spot.
So I think when it comes down to the autonomous, agent SOC, that it's good to do it, but like Troy said, as certain things get riskier, you want to focus on kind of preventing certain things from turning into bad situations, right? But either way, human in the middle is going to slow it down. Doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, I think, look, if we're going to talk about this in real world, and yeah, I have this dream to fully automate stuff. I don't know when we'll get there, but you need to start in different places, right? You got to be able to have at least some automation today. I don't know if you can go from zero automation to full AI. I just don't think that's a good jump. Now, some people might argue, skip the automation because that's too, you got to actually tell it exactly what to do. But I like that approach because you're training yourself or your team to actually give commands to AI.
Yeah.
So I have an idea here and a vision, right? And some people are not going to like this vision, especially if you own an MSSP. But what I really see is this is an opportune way for companies to bring the SOC back in-house. And what I mean in-house is instead of relying on third-party MSSPs that you pay an exorbitant amount of money for and get mid-level service, you could have all these AI agents. You have a very low staff of humans that oversee the entire operation. You still have to have a human to, set the guardrails, review the processes, make sure the agents are, deployed correctly, doing what they should do. But at the end of the day, you'll be able to bring your SOC back in-house with the assistance of AI agents and have a much smaller staff to do 20 times more than what you would ever get from an MSSP.
Super interesting you say that, because you were just saying the whole liability piece of it. A lot of organizations that go to an MSSP, they are trying to alleviate liability. You know,
so risk transfer. Yeah, I get that too. But what you find during ransomware, I've seen this in multiple high-profile cases, that risk never really transfers. There are so many outs in the MSA signed with that MSSP. The MSSP never takes on the risk themselves.
No, but I mean, from you think about it from, you know, the board is telling you to take care of this, and you could say, well, look, I just hired an MSSP, a big global one, and they've got it taken care of. So I don't need to focus on that. I can focus on other things. I think that happens a lot, right? We've seen that a lot.
But it doesn't actually do it. It doesn't mean anything. So
yeah, 100%. I mean, it happens all the time. And then I've never been fired for hiring IBM. That was a saying in the 80s and 90s, right? And I think that's what you're saying, Damian. But at some point, we're going to be able to, you know, those people who were on the fence about should I outsource to an MSSP or can I bring this back in-house? This is your answer. Absolutely, you can. Get a fleet of AI agents in the SOC. They're going to do 10 times better than an MSSP, and you'll be able to manage with a lower staff on site.
Yeah, I'm not arguing with you. I've gotten rid of 2 MSSPs at 2 different companies I've been at, and I brought them all either in-house or managed in-house somehow.
Caveat being, you have to have the skills internally to do it.
Well, that was before, and I think what Troy is saying, it makes it a lot easier now that you've got AI agents that can help you out.
Yeah, well, you can have access to those agents, but you still need people to build it. And so what I'm saying is like a 500 user shop.
Yeah, but it's easier because if you're thinking about building a SOC, like a lot of people go to the MSSP model because one, they don't want to have to worry about building 24/7.
Yeah.
You just don't have enough staff to run 24/7. Right.
Okay.
Then you got people that you have to pay and worry about. Most times you're hopefully not doing it in one country. You're doing it follow the sun model across the globe, leveraging labor in other countries. Now you can take that to the next level. You don't have to worry about managing people. You got to manage agents, and the agents don't have to sleep.
And they have access to pager duty. So if something bad happens, they just text you or call you.
In this future world where SOAR is dead, SIM is dead.
Troy saying MSSP is dead.
MSSP.
I don't know about that. I don't. I think, yeah, the pressure's on.
I think the pressure's on for them to do like what SOAR is in the position of, is to find a way to have more business value that you can charge a premium for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the MSSP could just manage your fleet of AI agents.
Yeah. And those who lean into AI agents are going to be the most successful. But here's a novel idea, Damian. If those MSSPs would provide better service, then maybe we wouldn't fire them. But I have worked with global firms and smaller firms, and never once have I talked to a CISO who says, yeah, you know what? I love my MSSP. Just doesn't happen. There is not one that has the customer service or the level of service that the customer expects.
But let me ask you this: isn't that
I've seen?
Isn't that supposed to be your image, though? Like I mean, if you walked in and said, "Yeah, I love everything you do," you could never hold their feet to the fire. So you got to walk in saying, "You're not doing it right. You guys suck. you got to do this better. You got to do that better. You got to charge me less."
You tell them, but when you're in a private room with a bunch of your peers and you talk about how much you hate the service you're getting from X, Y, or Z, that's a different story.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So it's kind of like you you beat them down. This sounds very domestic violence of how you guys treat salespeople, which is not good for me because I'm a sales guy, right? So, but I have had people that I've worked with that were very much like, not condescending, but like, yeah, you guys suck. And it's like, what do you mean? Like, do this on your own. You figure it out until you come back to me, you know. And then it's like, yeah, you know, just, you know, basically what it turns into is like, you know, I got to look a certain way. I got to act a certain way.
And by the way, if you're listening to this and you love your MSSP, please send me a DM, because I always love to be proved wrong. But I have not come across anybody who says, you know what, I just love this MSSP and I wouldn't change for the world. I've never heard that in my life. And I've talked to a lot of people.
Yeah, I've never really run into MSSPs very often, right? Maybe say it luckily, but
I think it depends, right? There are going to be organizations that just don't know where to start. They got nothing, and it's a huge risk. So the quickest way is an MSSP.
Yeah, it's the safest way to go because at least to some extent it's been proven out, and there's other customers that are buying their stuff, so it makes sense to like build your own or buy it. Like,
well, I mean, now though, do you need to go to an MSSP when you could just fire up a few agents?
That's the complicated part. I think that, as Fern said, people don't know how to do that. It is the easy button, but there are companies that I'm really excited about coming out in this space who are going to give you AI employees that do those tasks. And it's going to be a lot easier in the future to deploy AI agents that you can manage even with no skills.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of people are probably thinking, hey, you guys always say you see stuff coming. Why don't you tell us? Well,
here you go.
No, we're thinking about doing a whole different show that kind of fits. We're playing with the name. Yeah. Fern has some terrible ideas. I thought he was joking, and then
we cannot go. We cannot go with that one you said yesterday.
Okay.
I thought he was joking. That's why we did not respond. Troy and I did not respond to you.
Did you guys text each other and say, "Is he joking?"
No. I thought you were joking. I just thought, and then when you're like, nobody responded. Then that's when I realized you were serious, and I responded. But we are thinking of doing a separate type of show where we look at these products that are coming out. Mm-hmm. So if you want to see that, let us know, either in person or in the comments. We want to get that going, and then showcase some of these startups, or even they don't have to be startups, just cool tech that we want to.
Like emerging tech, or let's say mostly emerging tech. So kind of like eyes into some of the stuff you guys see on a regular basis, whether it's on like internal calls, like, sales calls, looking at the bleeding edge stuff. So I luckily get to hear about all these because I talk to you guys so often, but
So anyways, we do have a lot of products lined up for this type of show. What we're trying to work on are the legalities, because we want to give an honest review and we don't want to get into any legal trouble. So full honest reviews.
Damian, I met a really interesting CISO yesterday in the insurance world. There's a massive conference in Vegas going on. So there's dinners every night this week. And last night I met this really cool CISO from San Diego in the insurance business. And he asked me that same question. How does he stay on top of innovation like you and I do? And I said, you got to get in touch with venture capital. Most venture capital firms have a CISO in residence or somebody who's representative. Patty Degman over at Andreessen Horowitz, David Hahn over at Ballistic, great people who are looking to talk to the security world and talk about, first of all, where they're deploying capital to innovation, where they see the market going, and then talk to you about what you're seeing feet on the ground in the security world. So I highly recommend you connect with those people and chat, because that's how I stay. And I think, Damian, that's how you stay connected to innovation, because that if venture capital is funding these companies and backing it, they've seen something special. And that's usually how I see what's coming around the corner from an innovation
You don't even need to talk to anyone, Troy. Just go to the VC websites and see where they're invested. That's a good place to start.
Yeah, but I find that conversation with David and Patty and people like those so refreshing and interesting. I think, I encourage the connection. But yeah, if you want to just go look at their website, Sin Ventures, Night Dragon, Ballistic, Insight Partners, those are the big ones in cyber. Andreessen Horowitz, so many more. UNI Ventures, Holly Ventures. Talk to those folks, and they'll be doing it. Lightspeed, Greylock. I mean, there's so many great ones. So I don't want to leave anybody out. If I did, I didn't do it intentionally.
No, I named one. So, and we've worked with them on a few different companies, right, that are actually selling here locally before they got into the channel, which is interesting. So I guess back to the topic at hand. AI agents in the SOC. What does it mean for the people, right? Is SOAR dead? Probably. Or at least it's going to be called something different. We're probably going to call it SOAR, like SOAR with agents. At the end of it, put a little AI at the end. Who was it? It was GoDaddy. I saw a commercial for GoDaddy I was watching YouTube, and they call like their new website builder or era AI, and then they added some other letters with them. Like, oh my gosh, like everyone's just saying AI. But back to the SOC, fully autonomous agents, SOAR, all that stuff.
So at the end of the day, we got to get faster because the attackers are getting faster. So you have to be able to embrace some of these technologies and tools, or you're just going to be left behind.
Okay, perfect segue, because like that wasn't even planned, but this is where I wanted to take it, is getting money for this stuff, right? Is budget season. We're coming up on budget cycles, right? When it comes to planning for next year's budget, right? So a lot of times people have to come up with how they're going to spend their money, how much it's going to cost, where they're going to spend the money, and to be able to justify it, right? So I think a lot of people that listen to the podcast are people in positions where they have to, do these justifications. So because both you and Troy have done these things or are involved with conversations, I think it'd be interesting to hear kind of how you guys are positioning these different products of agents, agentic SOCs, fully autonomous SOC environments to boards, and then how you're kind of having those conversations so that way it might help, we'll say, to help a listener understand maybe from the context of someone that's been through that, if they haven't, or maybe just get like bounce it off the wall. So like, I'm your CFO, Damian. Convince me to give you the dough.
Yeah, I don't know. Here, look, I don't know if it's necessarily us pushing it forward as much as the CFO and the CEO pushing AI usage down. I don't know which one's greater.
Exactly.
Because I think the like we mentioned earlier, right? The board and investors, they're asking every organization, how are you adopting AI? How are you driving efficiency? So I think there's pressure from that side, from the top down,
to just do it,
to do a lot more of it. I think some of the resistance might be the teams actually building the AI because they don't want to lose their jobs.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I see the same thing. I was going to say that I would never have to go to my board CEO or CFO and say, I want to do an AI project. They're going to be asking me, why aren't you? And so those are going to get funded, and they're looking for headcount reduction. I know that we talk about that AI is not coming for your job. It's coming for the people who don't lean into AI, but we are being asked by boards and CFOs for headcount. And so the efficiencies that are gained from these AI agents in the SOC are going to have a real ripple.
I wouldn't say
community.
Always, right? I think, that always hits the headlines, Troy, where people are saying cut number of jobs because of AI.
Speaking from personal experience, not headlines.
Yeah.
I have been asked for headcount reduction via AI. And I talked to peers who have been asked for
there are, obviously they're in headlines.
AI, so.
They're in the headlines too, right? You see a lot of, who was the latest one?
Amazon. Amazon did like 14,000 people, I think was what I read the other day. So.
And so I think, that does happen. I think there's pressure for that in the ask. But I for the organizations that are not asking for it, I think it's a repurpose or elevating the actual humans doing the work. So if you think about it, if you could replace a remedial task with AI, that person doesn't have to waste time on that stuff anymore. They can move up the stack and do something more complex.
Yeah,
that's right.
But not everyone sees it that way.
I think there is enough of that. I just don't think it gets enough publicity when that happens.
What I really enjoyed doing, Damian, this started even 2 jobs ago, but even in my last job, I loved to see the creativity, because as I had this discussion with my employees and I said, look, I'm not going to take your job away with AI. You're going to be doing more higher level cognitive functions. Define what that is to me. Tell me where you see that working for you, so that the employee had a stake in it and a voice in it. Instead of me just demanding that they do X, Y, or Z, they could tell me how they were going to elevate their self after AI did the remedial or the redundant task.
Yeah. So when Fern has all his AI bots gathering all his ingredients to go cook, I would expect a 5-star Michelin type of meal versus something he whips together in 5 minutes.
Oh, trust me.
Because you got more time to spend on actually cooking.
Trust me. It's for sure. My cooking is some of the best cooking you've ever had. But you've never had it, so you don't know. Yeah, I like the idea of kind of like, this kind of reminds me of like staff aug, right? If you don't have the people, you hire them. But you don't have to go through the process of finding them. You just find a provider that can, bring in the Tommy guns or the big guns, right? Hired guns. And then it gets to a point where, you can have a tool that can do these different things for you. And you just, bring in the tool. You buy the tool, you build the tool, right? You don't necessarily have to have people doing the work, because now you've essentially got this kind of infrastructure that can do what people were doing before. But it's like we talked about at some point, there always has to be a person, for now, in a position to kind of make some of these decisions, or at least have guardrails around the decisions that are made, much like the banking money transfer situation we talked about. And the fact that people have the ability to build now is great, but then it also kind of brings its own downsides with it, which I've seen in a few phone calls where people are, building stuff, but they're not developers. They don't. So this is more like a personal story. Is like one of the things that really irritates me is when people say they're an engineer, and I'm like, oh, where'd you go to school for? Like, oh, I went to wherever they went. It's like, oh, they have an engineering program there. No. I mean, so wait? It turns into like people saying they're a sales engineer or they're an engineer, and it's like, like. I was in the trenches, man. I was doing calculus in high school, right? Like I was doing differential equations in my junior year of high school, right? So when I went to college and did all this stuff, linear algebra and things like that, and like differential equations again and again, like all these different things, like I kind of went through the fire. So when people say, "Oh yeah, no, I'm an engineer," it's like, I mean, yeah, I get it. So I kind of have that same mentality. Maybe it's just personal experience where people say, "Oh yeah, no, we're building this." It's like, yeah, but like, do you actually know how to code?
You don't need to. You just tell Claude to code it for you.
I know, but like maybe I'm just not as maybe say educated on the topic, but I kind of feel like if you don't have, we talk about foundational situation or foundational elements to security. You have to have your foundation right. You have to have the fundamentals correct, right? And I feel like when it comes to coding and having a security first mindset when you code, it requires certain types of training. And the minute you don't understand what those foundations are and you kind of offload it.
But you don't need to, because you have one agent that's coding it, and then you have another agent that's checking it for security vulnerabilities. And then you have another agent that goes and patches it.
So this feels like very much like I'm on the lawn saying, "Get off my lawn." Like I'm an old man right now.
Feels like that to me too, Fern.
Wait, are you saying I sound like an old man, or are you saying you're the old man too?
Yeah. No, you do sound like you're on the lawn screaming. I have I'm a certified routing engineer. I didn't go to college for engineering. So I used to call myself an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think I hear other developers, especially developers right now, who are having that same existential crisis. Like, you're not a coder. I vibe coded this app. I coded this app. You didn't code anything, I hear developers getting very upset and personally offended by what people are calling coding now. But what I'm saying to these developers is like, man, sun's setting on you very quickly.
Oh gosh, I'm about to be extinct.
Yeah.
I think that that these developers need to, first of all, have a better attitude. I met one recently who was so just like against citizen developers, as they call them, or vibe coders. And I'm like, man, that's the future. You can't have this attitude because you're going to be left behind. He was so he was frustrated with it. Like,
well, that's why I said I kind of feel like an old man, because I'm open to the possibility of being wrong, and I probably am wrong, right? Which is kind of why I'm just openly admitting this stuff, because it's like I don't know, but maybe we're coming into a phase where the engineering or education part is kind of like commoditized, right? When it comes to college.
What difference did you see that news story last week where there was a graduate who was getting their diploma and they lifted up their laptop to show the ChatGPT?
I saw that.
Did you see that? We'll put an overlay here on the video to show you the article. But I mean, the question though is, if you go to school, are you really
learning?
Are you using AI to help you? Is AI doing your assignments? Could it?
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, it's like
absolutely.
the whole calculator thing. Yeah, you could do math, but it's faster if you use the calculator.
True. I'm about ripe for the age of being an old man on the lawn. Wrong environment because I live in Arizona, but
I mean, the right environment. No lawns, but there's a lot of retirees here.
True, but they're all gone right now because it's summertime. Oh man, well, I have enough gray hairs to be considered a partial snowbird. So, but it was just my thought. So clearly, maybe gotta do some thinking about how I view these things. But I just thought I'd mention that because it kind of comes up a lot in conversation that I have with people, and I'm just like. I feel very old when I say these things, and maybe I'm not like Gen Z or whatever, but I figured I'd ask you guys, only to find out from two guys that are older than me that I'm on my lawn right now. Okay, so let's get back on track. So we talked about all these different things, right? We talked about the agentic, or how SOAR is dead, right? A lot of things are potentially dead. There's a lot of things that are coming out that are kind of pushing the needle forward, right? Damian, you feel like that's perfectly fine. Troy is on the same page as long as there's some sort of governance around it, right? And I think I can get in line with both. Had to jump in the middle of you guys a couple times today, but I think ideally you guys both have different perspectives based on your experience, and kind of, those experiences kind of create how you see things, right? And luckily I'm in the middle because I have none of that experience. I just more have the sales experience. So I do find it interesting because some of the conversations that I have at work are around people that are trying to manage the identities of what they're deploying. Right. We had a call today with a good friend of ours from, well, we can't say the names, but I'll just say Santosh, right? His team spoke with our identity team, and they were talking about how this company is doing just-in-time access the right way, right? Versus how other people call JIT and how they're doing it, and how these other guys are essentially creating a new space that is actually just-in-time versus kind of policy-driven just-in-time, right? And very static, if you will, right? So we have these conversations all the time, and the one thing that always comes up with the SOC is like, moving it forward and kind of elevating the skill set of the people that are there. Troy's had some experience where people get let go in favor of AI, but the business is pushing down to AI on people to get it done, and it's kind of like it's hard for people to make that move because they're in fear of what they might lose, right? Understandably. But I guess maybe my thought is there's a lot that we covered today. And like I like to always ask is there something that we didn't cover that I think that you would think is important when it comes to...
No, so my mindset is always work yourself out of a job. Always had that kind of mentality.
Wait. Work yourself out of a job. As in...
Yeah. Like, okay, so let's think about it this way. If you call a plumber because you got a plumbing issue, would you want that plumber to keep coming back and fixing stuff in your house all the time because something's always breaking? Or would you want them to fix it right the first time and never come back?
Yeah, it should get expensive if they keep... service calls, right? $75 just to show up and tell you that you just have to use a plunger or whatever.
Or eat fiber. Yeah. Or get the AI toilet.
Fiber, this shit don't look right. So yes, okay. When you say work yourself out of a job.
So, that can mean a bunch of different things, right? Work yourself out of a job. So you get in there, do your job so well, train the next person so they can do it so you can move on to the next thing. So if you could continue that's how you move up in your career. It's you start to at the bottom and then you start to build your capabilities, pass it on to someone else, and then get new experience and new capabilities and do the same thing. And, that's kind of the mantra I've always tried to get in front of students and, new in career, is that you're never going to be doing this one job you started your career with for the rest of your life. I mean, could you? Yeah, you could.
But do you want to?
No. Some people do, actually. I've seen people work in the same help desk job for 20 years.
Yeah, but at some point, with the way technology is going now, it might not be like that in the next 10 years.
Oh, it's surprisingly it hasn't been offshored to some country that can do it at a fraction of the cost. Now you got AI that could just take that job away, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about. So work yourself out of a job.
I think if you take that as, one of your mantras.
Find a way to be so good at it that you can kind of move into other areas and kind of have another, what's the tool in the bat belt? Another weapon in the bat belt. So you don't use it every day, but like you have these different tools that you've kind of learned. So you become like the Swiss Army knife at work.
You have broad experience is the way I phrase it.
Okay.
Yep.
What about you, Troy?
My last thing, Fern. Yeah, my last thing would be, as we continue to talk about, we're always going to need people that are going to be able to manage and keep up with these agents. So if you are in security, definitely go and, create your own bots. Use Codex, use Claude. Start really diving into how you manage these. Even get a Mac Mini or a Raspberry and spin up Clawbot, to do something that you wanted to do. Doesn't have to be very important. Could be just a lab in your house. But if you understand the inner workings of how these things work, you'll be able to manage them for the company. You'll be able to be that go-to resource. And that's what you want to position yourself as. Those folks will have resiliency in their job, and they'll be the last ones to be let go if that were to happen in your company. A lot of efficiencies are coming. you should be the driver of those efficiencies at every single level, whether you're at the help desk or all the way up into management. If you're a driver of efficiencies with AI, or you give ideas of how AI can create efficiencies in your company, they're going to keep you and you're going to have a job for a while. If you're resistant to AI, if you're offended by others who are leveraging it and doing better than you, that's going to be a problem. And you might be looking for another job soon. So that's my last minute.
The people that lose their jobs are the ones that are scared they're going to lose their jobs. Usually.
Exactly.
Now,
Yes,
there's other cases to that where, thousands of people get laid off because of AI and maybe get caught up in that. But all I got to say is things happen for a reason. So take that as an opportunity to reinvent yourself, take on some personal projects, and hopefully show something for that time so you can land the next job.
Yeah. So you're not actually losing your job. What you are is you're becoming the manager of these really weird digital interns. And with that, we'll see you next week.
Lightspeed agents moving past the human click. Approve the button, find the digital trick. SOAR is silent, just a ghost in the machine. We're trading liability for something unforeseen. Machine speed versus human hands, trying to hold on while the world expands. Machine speed versus human hands, trying to hold on while the world expands. We're riding in a ghost car, hands off the wheel, hands off the ghosts of the things that we feel. Autonomy is a dream until the beeping starts. A sudden awakening for digital hearts. A sudden awakening for digital hearts. Can you audit a ghost? Who's watching the game? Moving too fast or just living in fate? Moving too fast or just living in fate? A 500 user shop, no floor to the plan. We're building our own empires as fast as we can. $20 a month for a coding machine, while liability lingers as fast as we can. $20 a month for a coding machine, while liability lingers behind the glass screen. Work yourself out, that's the only way home, before the human eye takes the place on the throne. We're riding in a ghost car, hands off the wheel, hands off the ghosts of the things that we feel. Autonomy is a dream until the beeping starts. A sudden awakening for digital hearts. A sudden awakening for digital hearts. Can you audit a ghost? Who's watching the game? Moving too fast or just living in fate? Moving too fast or just living in fate? See you next week on DTF. We'll see where the agents take us next. Buckeyes Grill.